arts? Well, let's put it in context, okay? The first martial art I did was actually karate. And I don't ever really count, and I rarely mention it because I was so young when I did it. I was like 8, 9, 10, some about those kind of years I did it for, right? Something like that. And yeah, I fell in and out of love with that really quite quickly in comparison to the grand scheme of things. You know, I went a few years without doing anything and being a little bit skeptical about martial arts, really. And then for whatever reason, be it movies, be it some kind of calling or whatever it is, I got this thing again. And now I'm looking for some martial art. But I get back in those days, you know, there was no internet, there's no YouTube, so you don't even really know what you're looking for. You've heard of certain things. You've heard of karate, you've heard of judo, you've heard of ninjutsu. Because movies, yeah, ninja, you want to be a ninja, don't you? So what you would do is you'd go to a local newsagent, they'd have adverts in there, for those of you that don't know. Some of you know, so I'm not telling you anything new. You go to newsagents, they had ads in the window, class in a local church hall or something, or you'd look in yellow pages. But, you know, first port of call, you call people you know, don't you? So I picked up the phone, I called a few people. One guy said he knows a guy. The guy said, yeah, come down to the class on Friday, 8 p.m. I went down, we learned Pak Sao Punch, and I loved it, and I carried on from there. Are you asking me whether I think Wing Chun is a complete martial art or whether I think someone that does Wing Chun is a complete martial artist? Because the two are not the same, you know. You see, to me, Wing Chun is not a fixed thing. It's constantly evolving, so it can't be contained, observed, or described in a fixed way at any point. And yeah, you could say the same of an individual, but the difference is that an individual can be closed and narrow-minded where an art form can't. Now, if the form is allowed to grow by an open-minded student, you could say it's on the path to completeness. And I say on the path because no martial art is complete. None of them. To claim to be complete is like proclaiming to be perfect, and who would do that? Of course, I know what you mean by complete, but I'm trying to give you a more complete answer. You're talking about fighting tools, techniques, and ranges, but that just depends on how diverse your training is, really. So if you're willing to train in different combat zones, you know, pressure test things, see what works, and how it works, then you'll be closer to completeness. And you'll find that some people will do that work and some people won't. But if they don't, maybe their focus is just different, and that's okay for them as long as they acknowledge it. But if someone wants to learn how to defend themselves, you know, on the road, and they spend all their time just doing forms and chi sao, for example, I would suggest that their training is incomplete solely because of the goal that they have set for themselves. You see, chi sao is one of the tools that can bring about a deep and very specific understanding of a great many things, but it does not provide a complete understanding of what you need to defend yourself on the road. It just doesn't. For that, your training must also include different ranges, levels, stresses, which are all well within the scope of Wing Chun if the person is willing to do it and knows how. And, you know, your school will make a difference. So in that regard, completeness, or the path to it, is determined by actions, not by the art. Now, there are different areas of focus in martial arts. Some of them overlap, some of them don't. You've got self-protection, philosophy, health, sport combat, spirituality for some. And you know, you can find a Wing Chun school that says that they provide each of those things. Some schools even say they provide all of them. I don't provide all of them. So from that perspective, you could say that what I offer is incomplete because there are at least 2 things on that list that I don't teach intentionally. Do you understand? You can figure out which 2 on your own another time. Now, there's also a psychological framework we need to consider, where some people are very aggressive and they need or want an art to calm them down a little bit. And some people are very timid and they need to be brought up to balance. So is the martial art capable of establishing some degree of balance within the person as well? Or does it just take people up to a heightened state of aggression or heightened state of timidness and leave them there? Now there's another factor of completeness. So as you can see, the term complete martial art is very broad to me, but as broad as I see it, I think combative tools are an essential part and must always be present. Now, a lot of people start a martial art hoping to learn how to protect themselves in a road fight, street fight, where you don't know if or when your opponent will stop trying to hurt you or worse. And yet they spend 6 months, 1 year, 5 years doing some elevator music moon dance with incense burning. Sorry to put it down on it, pal, but that time didn't take you any closer to your goal because it was too damn calm, too comfortable. And even if the techniques you learned are good, the mind has not been trained to produce them in the presence of stress. It's time to wake up. The incense has gone out. So is Wing Chun complete? No, no martial art is. But the pursuit of completeness and how close you will get will depend on the goal of the person, the type of training, and the effort applied. And that's true of any martial art, isn't it? Have I noticed any differences in Wing Chun since I started? Wing Chun doesn't change. Well, it does. It adapts to fit the needs of the individual and the needs of the circumstance. So in that, I guess it's constantly changing. But can I say that I've seen any change in the overall structure of Wing Chun? Well, nah, it'd be arrogant for me to even suggest that I have, because I can only see as far as as broad as my perception allows me to. So if I say that there's been changes in the last 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 20 plus years, then it's arrogant and ignorant, because I might have just noticed something that was there some 50 odd years before I even started. So I can't really say of the whole art if there have been changes, but I will say that it changes with each person. It's like, Bruce Lee's water analogy. It takes the shape of the container. Well, I started as a young man, 13 years old, 1993. And now I'm a more mature man, hopefully. And throughout the years, there's been growth where my life experiences have influenced my training and vice versa. And that's probably the main change I could talk of. I could talk about techniques and that stuff, but I'm not going to go there, So if that's what you want to hear, you're going to be disappointed, because I'm not going down that road. Of course, I do things differently now to the way I did many years ago, but what's more important than that is what goes on beneath the surface, because that's what brings things to the surface. And that's what I was always taught. So that's why I'm talking about growth on a personal level, which is something that happens to everyone regardless of how old they are when they start training. Something changes. Now on a more physical side, I'd say that pressure testing is definitely more prominent now, because it didn't really happen in classes before, or at least I didn't see it when I was coming up. At most, you'd see an intense bit of chi sao, and even that was kind of frowned on. Although actually a friend and I, we used to hire out space within a gym, within a boxing ring, and we'd go there every Sunday, slap some gloves on, and hit the bags and spar. This was part of the early years of my training, and soon other people also started coming along. So we had some boxers, some other people from fighting backgrounds, and some people that didn't know anything at all, but we all had a go. And even though that was part of my early experience in training, when I first started teaching, for whatever reason, I didn't share it with my students. I didn't include it. I guess it was because it was something I did separate to my experience of a proper class. Maybe I thought I didn't have the right. I don't know. I don't know why. at that time. But I wanted to give people at the time what I thought was a traditional experience, whatever that is. But in hindsight, it was my perception of what is a traditional experience that was flawed, not the traditions. Because surely nothing's more traditional than trying to make things work. So a big change for me was when I reflected on my own experience and started sharing what has now become an important part of the way that I teach. Now, no one has to spar if they don't want to, because I realize it's not for everyone, but the option's there. And if they don't spar, they will experience some degree of pressure testing, because we learn through trial and error. Is it going to be uncomfortable sometimes? Yeah, yes, it is sometimes. But that's the cost of change, discomfort. And pressure testing conditions reveal so much about the techniques and the person trying to apply them. It's not the same as doing it while the elevator music is playing. You could say you need to dig deeper. And that's all done alongside the other training that's less pressure orientated, because that also brings great value too. Now, on a more personal note, and on the subject of change, I knew nothing about the philosophies inherent in martial arts when I started. This is something which comes through training. It's something that you realize yourself, about yourself, and how you fit into something bigger than yourself. Sometimes you're told a maxim or a saying that you hold for life, but a lot of it isn't verbally spoken. It's acquired through work. And that has helped me immensely in everyday life. And I'd say that's a significant change which occurs in a martial artist's journey. Now, the things that were limitations to me were not imposed on me, they were imposed by myself on myself. And some of them I freed myself from. So that would probably be one of the greatest changes that can come about on the path to becoming a martial artist. There still is something deeper than even what you can do to someone else. There's something that goes on inside the person. And it's not for me to tell you exactly what that journey is, because it's going to be yours. You're going to own it, and it's going to be different for you as an individual. But there is something more going on here. It's not just punching and kicking. And I think that's what people imagine when they hear martial art. They imagine it's going to be punching, kicking, or trying to choke someone out or something. It's not just that. That is the end phase of what begins as an internal journey. Because you've got to search yourself. You've got to ask yourself, why am I keep on making that mistake? There's lots of mistakes that are made on the path to getting something even semi-functional. And there's a lot of soul searching that has to be done. I'm not claiming it to be, from my perspective at least, some spiritual thing. Some people will get that because that's their intention. But I am saying it's going to be an internal journey that we will go through, an opportunity for growth, if we can get the balance right. From the beginning, my vision for Century Wing Chun was always something that means more than any one person's contribution, any one single person's contribution. And that's why I didn't call it Neil Parris Wing Chun or something like that, because I wanted it to be something that my students and me could be part of together, rather than something they sit under me in. Now, I know that might sound contradictory slightly, because I'm the teacher and they're the student, right? But have you ever heard the saying, when one person teaches, two people learn? And then consider that the students who go the distance will eventually be able to do their own thing in their own way. And I hope that they'll decide to do so as part of Central Wing Chun. So although Central Wing Chun has been started by me, it's really been built by a collective. So those people who earn their way along the journey should be able to make use of that thing that they've helped grow. Now, how it really got started, like I said, I started it. I gave it this name that it didn't have when I first had the idea to start training. And it came out of tough times for me personally. Wing Chun was always the thing that I would go back to in difficult times. It would put me back on a path. It would channel my thoughts better. And at some point I decided, why keep on doing this stuff and coming back here to sort my head out? Why not just stay here and continue to share this? I decided to go all in, I guess you say, and do Central Wing Chun. And you could say Central Wing Chun saved me in some ways. And hopefully it's been a positive influence in a lot of people's lives.